For those guys that are interested in Nico Hynes, that round 6 buy is just really annoying. It's right in the middle there. What do you do? Do you pick him up for the first 5? Do you go for one of the other top guns in Cam Murray or something like that? So there's a lot of question marks here. I think this serves really well for guys that are cash cows. You get that 5 rounds if you know they got a bit of a roll for that 5, and then you can move them on. But how many cash cows are we likely going to see in the Sharks squad? Lockie's back with us to explain everything Sharks related. So those first 5 game mates, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Sharks have got one of the easier draws in the NRL, but none of it's really spread out. It's in little patches, and we can see to start the year, they've got Dragons and Warriors right next to each other around 4 or 5, but they've got Rabbitohs, Eels, Raiders in their first 3 matches, so not easy teams by any stretch. So it's hard to say safe outside backs value, but I think there's going to be a lot of consistency in the Sharks team. Maybe not a lot of cash cows, but more guns that you look to bring in.
Yeah, I did an analysis obviously on the centres and the wingers in this side, and you're looking at even like Will Kennedy at fullback as well. They're all guys that have been around for a while. They're all really good in their own right in terms of fantasy scoring, high 30s to 40s with Ramian and these types of players. Even Ikevalu, when he comes in, he gets a good opportunity to score as well. But how much value is in them? And a lot of them are kind of streaky type of players like Talakai. We saw what he did last year. So it's going to be interesting to see how they end up looking, where they're priced at after the first 5 rounds. You get to have a look at them, a little rest in the buy time, and then from 7 onwards, a lot of these guys that aren't playing Origin, you get to run all the way to round 17. So that could be enough to make a bit of cash on some of those outside backs if the Sharks are playing really well. I have them coming 2nd this year. Where do you have them, Lockie?
Yeah, well, I had them originally coming 6th, but with their soft draw, even though they might not be a top 4 team that you'd be scared to face, they'll probably be at least in the top 4, if not 3rd or 2nd, as you were saying.
There you go. 6 would be an interesting one. I just see them just having obviously coming 2nd last year. They keep pretty well the same team. I can just see them just rolling along like they did last year as well. So that'll be very interesting. But let's start up top with Jaden Beryl. He, as someone that has a fair bit of upside, he's in a contract year as well, like you've got there. At 230K, if there's an injury to Blake, who we'll speak about next, he could be a must-have, right?
Yeah, well, any starting hooker who's at 230K, you just jump on because that's basically 200 or 300K cash ready to be made. But yeah, I think people are jumping the gun on him. He's nearly 10% owned, and he's definitely not going to start the year unless Brayley's gone. So yeah, one to wait for injury, not one to start with.
Yeah, and you've got those comments there. He's got really good scoring. New South Wales Cup averaging nearly 50 with 50 to 70 minute games, which he would get somewhere in that sort of 60 range at a minimum if he was to get his chance. But yeah, let's call our jets on him. He won't be on the bench. Blake will be playing 80 minutes or close to it. Maybe spelled a little bit by Cam McInnes. Remember, they have him as a nice makeshift hooker if they need to, which is lovely. And that's probably the other thing. If Beryl being young, he might not actually get that chance. If there's an injury to Brayley, McInnes could just slot straight into that 80-minute hooking role. So yeah, big question marks on him in that one. Let's speak about Brayley there at 690K. You mentioned Lockie Croker in the Manly video that he's that kind of mid to late 40s type of scorer that probably doesn't have the upside to be a keeper in the hooking position. Do you agree with Brayley here?
Yeah, I think that, well, he increased his scoring a little bit last year and the Sharks went a lot better, but the Sharks are going to be good again, but I mean, they won't go that much better than last year. He's just going to sit at that high 40s, low 50s average and not really be worth buying. 690K is not somebody you want to spend on if it's such an awkward price and not much upside.
I agree with that, guys. See the description, guys, if you want to jump in that private group. We're getting ready for a cracker season. Heaps of prizes up for grabs. The exclusive content there. Lockie pops a lot of his deep dives in there when he just thinks about them. Pops it in there as well. Plenty of value in that one. And check out the shorts, guys. We're pumping out a lot of them at the moment in that section through videos. Just check that on the YouTube channel, guys. Let's move to Kate Dykes. Unfortunately for him, on a big ACL injury, which is not what we're after here. Came, a day or 2 after they moved on from Lockie Miller. So if there is an injury to someone like Kennedy, it potentially gives a spot to someone at fullback or on that wing. So sad news for Sharks and their fans there that Kay Dykes being a young superstar on the rise there has done that, but it could give some other guys a bit of an opportunity fantasy wise. So we have to rule him out for the season. Finucane, a bit of an on and off season for him, wasn't it? It gave some opportunities to some of the other middle forwards. Talk about Finucane and his potential chance at scoring well, but also the effect he might have on some of the other middle forwards.
Yeah, Finucane is one of 3 middle forwards in the Sharks who'll probably play about 50 minutes and probably squeeze guys like Hamlin-Uele or Royce Hunt for minutes. However, he did miss a fair chunk of last year due to head knocks and injuries, and he's actually pretty discounted compared to what he did when he was fit. He's not really a massive PPM scorer. Even when he was at the Storm, he was probably a 40-point guy for 50 minutes. And last year, when he was playing those games, when he wasn't injured, he actually averaged about 43. But I mean, that's only 7 points of upside in someone who's one of the worst concussion risks in the NRL. So it's not quite enough, to be honest.
Yeah, it's sad that he's had plenty of knocks, but yeah, more thinking probably not going for him, guys. But if he is out and he spends some time out there, obviously someone like McInnes benefits a little bit, but someone like Royce Hunt, who let's talk about now, he has a terrific PPM. He just doesn't get enough minutes there. He's got him priced at 30 and a risky cash cow. Are we looking for him to need about 40 minutes to be worth it?
Yeah, well, I'd say 40 minutes would be safe. He might not even quite need 40 minutes because he's a huge points per minute guy. Last year, he actually averaged 1.03 PPM. So 40 minutes would probably give 40 points, and at a price of 30, that's your 10 points. But it would probably need an injury to Finucane or something like that for him to be valuable.
Yeah, a few people are thinking about him now. I'd just avoid him. He would be a better option than Hamlin-Uele, just with a nice try-scoring upside, but I'd be avoiding both of them at really awkward prices at this point and just wait for injuries and things like that for them to get some bigger minutes potentially. So Wade Graham is going to be it's going to hinge a lot on how Teague Wilton's going to go. So the mail at the moment is that he's going to be playing a middle forward role off the bench. I'd like to see that in their trials. It's going to be next week, right? I think is Graham playing this week? I know Wilton is.
He's at 5'8", which is right. Very interesting. So that might be good because it might mean they want him to be that utility, that sort of middle forward utility a bit, and maybe Wilton will get really good minutes. But until we actually see it happening, Wilton could be anything from an absolute gun to an absolute trap. We just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think this video is going to come out after this weekend's trial, so we will know a little bit more. But what we're looking for, guys, is Wilton to play some big minutes. We probably won't know heap after this week, but the following trial, if Graham is playing and he comes off the bench in the middle role and Wilton keeps his minutes on an edge, then I think that's going to be great signs for him. So let's talk about Teague right now. At 5.36, it's obviously really cheap at 37.5 average. Last year when he got big minutes on the edge, he was a 50-point type of scorer. Do we see him at a minimum getting sort of a 47, 48 if he can get around that 70 minutes?
Yeah, if he gets good minutes, he's pretty much just lock into your team. We saw that if he's 50 points or so when he's playing those big minutes, that's 12 or 13 points. That's easily a 10 points. So I think once he does get those big minutes and Graham goes into that middle role full time, he's pretty much almost a must buy.
Yeah, I've locked him in my side thinking that that's the role he's going to get. It's probably a fair transition with having someone that's really, really good on the rise. Graham can come through the middle and be a bit more of a link through the middle. I think it's going to be great. And he can kick on that left side if he drifts along there and does his little mid-range kicking, which is obviously one of the best to really do it on that left side for the last sort of 10 years. We move on to really, it's a couple of cheapy guys in there. You've got Hazelton and Hiroti. Any of those guys you're interested in?
Hazelton might be one that pops up on the bench at some point, but he'd need a few injuries. He's an okay scorer, but he'd need to be one of those 30-minute guys. And I think guys like Oregon Kafusi are probably ahead of him, so needs a few injuries, but one to just keep an eye on, especially if one or two guys go to Origin, which the Sharks don't have many Origin players. Hey, they kind of remain unaffected, and that's why they did so well last year.
Yeah, that's why I see them just sneaking, like just getting that top four pretty easy. That if Hynes is there,
might have to rethink. Hey,
yeah, if he's even if he's at 18th man, which is probably likely, he might miss a game or two for the Sharks, but it still means he plays 80 the next week. So having your leader there like that, And yeah, really no one else. Like Talakai got a game last year. I doubt he plays again. Yeah, just a great team for a regular season team. As you said, you might not be super worried about them. You probably have Roosters and Panthers and a few of those teams, and Rabbitohs, for example, ahead of them in the finals race. But yeah, as a regular season team, they're going to be very interesting that way. Let's have a chat about Nicho Hynes. So he's someone I've been floating around as captain in my team. There's a potential for moving off him just because he scored so amazing at 69. And if there's some potential guys that can score in the 60s, and have a little bit of value in that halves position, I might fade him, but he's still, I think, close to the best captaincy option, him or Nathan Cleary.
Yeah, he absolutely exploded last year and probably doesn't play Origin, or at best is a utility or 18th man, so he'll be fine to back up more than Cleary. The appeal for him is that even though the Panthers' bye schedule is really good and has long backups for the round 14, round 17 games like that, Cleary doesn't mind resting his Panthers guys, especially if they're doing well on the ladder. So Hynes might actually play 3 or 4 more games more than Cleary, and that's what you're looking for at a similar average. It might be worth paying that extra $25K to get Nicho Hynes.
Yeah, well, if you look at their bye schedule, they have the bye themselves in 13, so you miss out on him anyway. Round 16, if he's not playing Origin, then he'll get that game there. They have the bye in 17, which is where you're going to have a lot of your guys back, which is ideal. And then he would play in round 19 as well, so he could potentially only miss the 3 games. Could also potentially miss the 5 games if he is 18th man and he's in camp in that time. So definitely interesting. When you're looking at Cleary, he's going to clearly miss a lot of games through that middle section. But really, you got to have a replacement for him as captain in that round 6 bye. But if you're having someone like Grant, if you got a Payne Haas, a Tarpany, these types of guys, they could cover that role for you. So he's still clearly, I think, the best scoring option, very close to Cleary there. And yeah, you're not going to go wrong with popping him as captain in your side, right?
Yeah, I think Cleary will average 1 or 2 more points more than Hynes, but I think Hynes is going to outscore him total points-wise by 100.
Wow. Yeah, well, that clearly shows that he could be a good option if you're looking just to hold him throughout the entire season there. Matty Cavallo has always been a great scorer. He comes in at a nice cheap price of 26, considering he didn't play many games last year. Looks like he's carrying a bit of an injury. He may not be starting fit and ready to go for the start of the season. But if there's any injury in this side and he's fit, you got to get him in because he has just so much upside, over 10 points there.
Yeah, Maka, about September, he had a patella tendon rupture, which is a real nasty injury, actually. Similar recovery time to an ACL, so we'll probably see him mid-season if there's an injury or two. But to start with, their outside backs are actually a little bit thin now that they let Miller go, and then Dykes went down a day or two later, and Ikuvalu is still gone. So their first wing backup's probably Connor Tracy. Yeah. Their first fullback backup's probably they might even go like a Kale Iro or something, upgrading him to the top 30.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, isn't it? And yeah, you got Kale Iro down there in the development on the side there. We've got, I suppose you could maybe have Malatalo or something there back there. You've got Hynes that could play 1 as well, but you obviously want him in at 7 as much as possible there, with the hope that Matty Moylan gets through a nice full season again there. You've got Sione Katoa. He comes in a little bit cheaper than some of the other outside backs, but he's on the right side, which, as we know, the left side is much stronger in the majority of teams, and especially this one when you've got Talakai and Malatalo over there, and most likely T. Wilton on that left side. Yeah. Matty Moylan had a great sweeping run, setting up all of these guys. Do we see any value in Sione there?
I think he'll probably do similarly to last year. The Sharks are probably the most prominent team in the NRL for going right side to really grind up the middle of the field. And then on tackle 4 or 5, spreading it out left. That's why Mulatalo had so many tries. That's why Talakai had a few weeks where he's absolutely unstoppable. Yeah. So they need to go back to the right side in order to score tries a little bit. So I think he's probably not going to be a gun. And unless he gets a lot cheaper, he's probably not one to be guaranteed value.
Yeah, very fair. Oregon Kaufusi moves from Eels to the Sharks. He had a pretty prominent role at the Eels. Do we see a little bit of a lesser role and he's probably a watch?
Yeah, I'd say so. Somebody has to play probably 20 minutes. I think Wade Graham starts the year playing a little bit of edge and a little bit of middle. and say that 10 to 15 minutes of middle probably have to come out of Kafusi's 30, and so he might just play 20 off the bench to start the year and go down to nearly basement price.
If he does that, then we know what he can do, guys. So just have him in your black book again. If there's an injury or two in these Hamlin Ueli, Royce Hunt have that bit more of a punch. Oregon Kafusi, a little bit more of a workhorse, can have a good run. But if one of those workhorse type of players goes down, then he could be one to step up into those type of minutes, I think. Hunt and Hamlin Ueli probably keeping a similar 30, 40-minute role there. Will Kennedy, so he became a bit of an interest last year. He had a bunch of real low games. I can't touch him. He's too scary. He's got 3 games he's got -6, a -5, and a -4 in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It's just too much for me. But a lot of people brought him in at basement price. He's up at 372 now. He just scores too low for me.
Yeah, I don't know why they priced him up. Like, they were all mostly his own doing. Like, 23.7, you might have looked at him a tiny bit, but 26, that means he has to average 36 to be enough value. And for somebody that can score negative in 80 minutes, the fullback position, don't touch him. Please don't.
Ugh, that's so scary. Cam McInnes, we loved having him in our sides last year at certain times. He was also a bit frustrating in terms of minutes a few times. So he's coming back. Second year from ACL is usually good signs. I just don't know if we see the massive minutes that we need from him. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Last year, he did well when Finucane wasn't in the team. I think his average is quite significantly different. With Finucane, his average was 44.9, and then in 54 minutes. Without Finucane, it was 61 minutes and a 57 average. So he's kind of priced himself in a little bit there. And they even bumped him a little bit up to like a 52 break even. So yeah, unless Finucane's gone, he won't be a gun. And if Finucane is gone, or maybe even Blake Brayley goes down and he gets the hooker spot full time, then he'll be one to pick up.
Yeah, he's definitely interesting because he has that lovely PPM. But yeah, probably not for now. And why do they price him up? Seriously. Matty Moylan, 31 average last year. He had an absolutely incredible year. So we really can't be looking at him as a fantasy buy. He's a clear avoid. To score 31 and having almost a career year is not good enough. We go to Mulatalo. He averaged 40 last year. Obviously, plenty of tries, like you said. Do we see any sort of uptick from him, or is it about the same?
It's hard to know because there might actually be a little bit. When he played full games at wing, his actual average was 41. So there's potential for him to have a little bit. And early season, he did really, really well, actually. He was averaging a try a game and 2 line breaks, which is pretty crazy stuff. But then from round 15 to round 23, he had a really, really low spot. He didn't really break past about 45 any times and scored only 3 tries and 5 line breaks in 5 games, which doesn't sound so bad, but considering his other scores, that's a huge drop. And I just can't help but wonder, was that sort of origin hangover from a different kind? Because in 2021, there was that horrible debacle where he was supposed to debut for Queensland and then they found out that he wasn't eligible and it really devastated him. Maybe there is some upside for him and that's pretty all narrative. But there is potential for Mulatalo to score better because between about round 1 and Origin, he was averaging a fair bit better than what he's priced at. So he is on my watch list, but yeah, too expensive to start, not safe enough, consistent value.
Risky, that's for sure. Let's go to Ramian then as another one of those outside backs at a 41 average. You got him as a potential keeper. I can definitely agree with that. I can just see Sharks playing really well and he's going to be a beneficiary for sure. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, Ramian loves a tackle break and he's one of the most prominent offloaders in the game. That is a brilliant base to have as a center. If he can crack some more tries, he will probably move up a little bit. I think you can't start with him. He doesn't really have much upside. You could probably go down a little bit to like maybe a Tony Staggs or Joseph Suwali at low 500s or just under 500 instead of Ramian. But I think Ramian might be someone you want to have in your final team, depending whether or not we get some dual centers, which might be interesting, like Garrick, if he gets center dual and goes to fullback at some point.
That's fair. They got a clean run from round 18 to all the way through to 27. So very interesting if The big thing there is that Sharks played so well last year and he still averaged 41. So do you expect them to play about the same way and he can still average 41? So that's probably it there as a worry. We go to Nakora and Rudolph there. Nakora averaged just under 50. I know he's been someone that you're interested in across the years there, being a bit more of a pod week to week there. Give us a little narrative around him.
Nakora was the saddest story of my 2022 season. He started really nicely. I saw in trials, Hynes was just putting him through holes and going over for tries. I thought, that's great. Priced at about 45, he could really be a cut price keeper that nobody's on. And it started out that way, but then he just kind of did nothing. And he's got a few missed tackles in his game and is a really good line runner. So I thought, yes, he's about to go through. And then they just cut out pass and go to Bramian or Katoa to go through for a try. And then to finish off the year after I sold him in round 17, he went on a massive streak. So I think he's priced too high now. He's nearly 50 average. 700k is way better spent elsewhere. But I mean, if he does pick up some more consistent tries, he might even become a gun. So we'll have to see.
Awesome. And guys, if you're liking this content, please subscribe. There's going to be videos every day, and then obviously ramps up in that last week or so before the season starts and also during the year. So get around that. Scoop and I appreciate it. He's doing plenty of work for this community. So big thanks in the comments for Scoop if you're enjoying that. There, we move to Rudolph, like I said, at 597, 42 average. He did improve a fair bit the last couple of years, getting bigger minutes, but still hasn't been able to crack anywhere near keeper status. Are we still avoiding him?
Yeah, Rudolph is one of those guys who you would buy if you're making a new NRL team, but won't buy for your fantasy. He's not a massive PPM guy, even though he is a fantastic forward. Just avoid.
Yeah, so good for your team morale, isn't he? And the fans love him, that's for sure. Sifa Talakai at 42 average. Again, he's had some streaks last year. He went really well. He hit over 100 in one game with against Morgan Harper, unfortunately. You have him as overpriced. I probably see him similarly around that 38, 39 average.
Yeah, I think so. I think the shock factor was what got him those big scores because he's built like a fridge and he was just trampling guys one-on-one. Later on, they sort of ganged up on him and he wasn't anywhere near as effective. And then he picked up, I think it was a rotator cuff injury, which he played through for the rest of the year. So there is potential that he didn't score as well as he could have and that he might have a little bit of value. But yeah, given the way that teams sort of defend against him now, I think you probably don't want to pick up Talakai.
Yeah, I agree with that. Connor Tracy, we're going to want a little bit cheaper, right, before we consider him?
Yeah, he's wing fullback, backup type guy. He'll probably be on the wing if Mulatalo is out or maybe even Katoa is out. But yeah, at nearly 500, you'd want him to drop a bit as a bench utility. And do you reckon they'd go him or Braden Trindle for utility? Probably Trindle, won't it?
Yeah, I'd say so just, but it's a hard one. Maybe Tracy is the 18th man or something like that. I think there'll be 14 and 18, those two, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. If they do run a bench utility, maybe Wade Graham's that person this year. We don't know, hey?
Potentially, for sure. And Jackie Williams, he's been priced up as well for some silly reason. 1.5 points, but he's at 319. Are we just avoiding him? Just not going to get enough minutes? He can play well, though. Good little bench forward in NRL terms.
Yeah, he was sort of tipped to become the next Paul Gallen, but hasn't really broken through yet. And he's not base price. Just avoid him.
Remember we picked him up in 2020? Did you start with him?
I think I did it, and he just didn't do a lot, hey?
No. Yeah, I think you got big minutes, and one of them got like a 28, and we're like, beautiful. You're meant to be this high PPM guy. Thanks, bro.
He was 2020 or 2021's Bullimore.
Oh god, yeah, that's right. We actually we had at least Bullimore didn't have like the Corey Parker terms or something, whereas Jack Williams was like, yeah, next Gallon, and then just flopped. But that's the Sharks, guys. Any other thoughts, Lockie, to finish it off?
Yeah, mostly guys who will be keepers later on. You can watch them. I don't think there's going to be a lot of value because they are so settled.
Yeah.
There's potential for McInnes or maybe Royce Hunter-Braham, Hamlin Uele if there is some injuries. But until then, it's probably Hynes or bust.
I agree with that. Thanks, guys. That's the Sharks, and we'll head on to the Roosters next.